Hello, everyone. Welcome to ASHRI, the Academic Advisory Council for Signage Research and Education Emerging Fellows webinar. My name is Ellen Babcock. I'm a board member of ASHRI and an associate professor emerita of the University of New Mexico. And I'm here to introduce Dan Vlahos, who will be our featured fellow today. So a little bit about Dan. Dan is a Boston-based design leader, educator, and researcher. He is currently a senior lecturer at Bentley University and is the president of AIGA Boston. Vlahos is also a member of the Boston Society of Printers and was a founding member of Design Museum Boston, now Co-Design Collaborative. His interdisciplinary design work has been recognized by the AIGA, the One Club, Print, HOW, and the Interactive Media Council. Vlahos began his career in Arnold Worldwide's Volkswagen Design Group and later served as creative director for Shepley Bulfinch Architects. His past clients include Harvard University, Duke University, Educators for Social Responsibility, and the Industrial History Center. Vlahos received an MFA and BFA from Massachusetts College of Art and Design, where he first began teaching in 2009. His research explores empowerment, complexity, dynamic media, sustainability, and creative learning. In 2020, Merrimack College's Interdisciplinary Institute named Vlahos a presidential fellow. And in 2021, Vlahos entered into the Design Incubation Program as a writing fellow. In 2023, he became a USGBC Lead Green Associate and an AIGA Design Leader. In 2024, Vlahos was named an ASHRI Emerging Fellow. So let's welcome Dan.
Thank you all for joining, and thank you, Ellen, again for the introduction. Today, I'll be talking about my ASHRI-funded project, Portal to Elliot Concord River Preserve, an exploration of Trompe-l'œil using lenticular printing. Once again, my name is Dan Vlahos. I'm from Bentley University, and I'm a 2024 ASHRI Emerging Fellow. This is an abstract for the talk. In this talk, I will share the process, status, conceptual underpinnings, and current outcomes of Portal to Elliot Concord River Preserve, a Trompe-l'œil three-stage lenticular public art intervention currently installed in the lower level of Lindsay Hall, just footsteps from Bentley's Film and Media Studies Lab. As you now know, this project was funded through ASHRI, a 501(c) not-for-profit organization founded in 2015. In this talk, I will also describe the photographic process used to capture the high-resolution imagery, along with the project's key cultural, conceptual, and historical influences. My research advisor for this project, thank you, Ellen, is Ellen Babcock, Associate Professor of Art Practices, Department of Art, College of Fine Arts, the University of Mexico. And a recent congratulations to Ellen on her retirement and emeritus status. I've loosely divided today's talk into 4 sections that conveniently all start with the letter P: the proposal, some precedents, the production process, and lastly, perspectives and outcomes. So first, some brief notes on my proposal for this project. What is a sign? In their 2016 book, Analyzing Cultures, an Introduction and Handbook, Marcel Danesi and Paul Perrone provide a comprehensive introduction to cultural semiotics. On page 46, the authors state, quote, "A sign can be defined formally as anything, a word, a gesture, etc., that stands for something other than itself, the referent," end quote. Going further, the authors state the word dog, for instance, is a sign because it does not stand for the sounds D-O-G that compose it, but rather for a domesticated carnivorous mammal, Canis familiaris, related to foxes and wolves and raised in a wide variety of breeds. In contemplating a signage-related grant proposal, and thus in developing what I saw as a researchable question, I wondered if or how signage could signify nature. The threads of this question are also evident in my teaching. Each year, for over 5 years, I've asked my Introduction to Graphic Design students to collaboratively design a photo book using images they capture at a nearby wildlife sanctuary. The images are paired with short reflective essays that they themselves compose. Beyond developing skills related to photography, editing, curation, immersing my students in nature provides us with a platform and critical frame to then discuss the dialogic opposite of the natural, that which is artificial or signified, or to use another word, designed. In some ways, this project resides at the nebulous intersection of the artificial, the natural, and the signified. With Danesi and Perron's definition of a sign in mind, I wondered what kind of text or gesture I could devise. After refining several sketches, my 2024 grant application to ASHRI was accompanied by these two diagrams. On the left was a proposed method of photographic capture for what in my proposal I described as a portal or door to nature. On the right was what I imagined would be the physical product, a door-sized trompe-l'œil 3-stage lenticular output of the imagery I proposed to capture. Furthermore, in my proposal, I suggested that I would find an uninspired but moderately trafficked public space to site this door as a kind of intervention and then attempt to explore its effects. Let's look at a few precedents and inspirations for this project. There are thousands of great examples and reference points for trompe-l'œil throughout art and design history. But when I first moved to Boston in the mid-1990s, I fondly remember seeing this lovely building-scale trompe-l'œil mural just off Newbury Street. The mural was designed by artist Richard Haas and was completed around 1977. It was commissioned by Peter Blake, then the director of Boston Architectural Center, now Boston Architectural College. The mural was intended to simultaneously simulate an 18th century architectural drawing and a trompe-l'œil facade. It's still there today for those that aren't from Boston. Another more recent precedent, some on this call may be familiar with this recent work. This is an interactive portal that was first installed in New York City around May of 2024. Led by artist Benedakis Gillis, the new NYC portal was initially connected to a sister portal in Dublin. The work as proposed was described as a testament to the power of art to transcend physical barriers. But within a few months, after a string of bad behavior on both sides of the portal connection, this live connection was terminated. Earlier this year, I accepted a senior lecturer position at Bentley University, which to this day is mostly known for its focus on business education. The image seen here is a Harry Potter-themed gold leaf foil stamped ticket to Hogwarts. This ticket is currently taped to my office door at Bentley. Like my predecessor at Bentley, and alongside a wonderful cohort of colleagues, I have become keenly aware of my oddly creative pedagogy within a business institution. Like this ticket to an imagined place, the signs and symbols I put forth attempt to encourage divergent thought, imagination, and speculation. Creative modes of thought are essential not only in art, design, entertainment, and culture, but also in business. And so it may come as no surprise then that this portal project builds on several of the case studies I completed in my graduate work at the Dynamic Media Institute in Boston. Shown here is my Isabella project, which in similarly Harry Potter-inspired ways proposed to dynamically bring Isabella Stewart Gardner back to life as an interactive personification on the actual walls of the museum. A case study of this work is published in my 2017 thesis book, The Education of a Communication Designer. Now let's talk a bit about production, technology, and techniques used to produce this portal. If you can picture this scene of me this past summer, I'm in a nature preserve with a bag full of production equipment, a DSLR camera mounted on one tripod, connected to an iPad on a second tripod. In my proposal, I suggested that I would explore capturing the imagery needed to create such a portal using a special anamorphic lens that is, to my knowledge, rarely, if ever, used in still photography. In the diagram on the left, starting at the top, is the 4:3 photographic ratio most of you are familiar with. Then below that is 16:9, which most of you are likely also familiar with as the standard widescreen video format. Then below that is 2.4:1, the anamorphic format, which is informally described as cinematic. That's the format I use to capture my door. The anamorphic lens, when rotated to a vertical orientation, perfectly matched the common proportions of a door. One of the curious things about these somewhat obscure and, until recently, quite expensive lenses is that the image, when captured, is slightly compressed or squeezed, as it is described in the world of film production. After the digital image is captured, the image needs to be digitally de-squeezed in post, in my case using Adobe Photoshop. Another quirky and irksome aspect of this particularly obscure model of lens I acquired was that it required manual focusing. Before we continue, I will share just a brief story. As I was capturing this imagery on a hot summer day in Carlisle, Massachusetts, I did not think I would encounter another human in the remote area of the woods. But sure enough, a fellow hiker passed by and quipped, "Nature photography?" To this I responded, "I'm using an anamorphic lens to capture digital imagery in hopes of creating a lenticular portal to nature." The hiker raised his eyebrows, nodded, and glanced at me as if I were a mad scientist, and politely kept walking. Months later, here's what arrived in a giant door-sized wooden box at Bentley University. After calling around for weeks, I found a single fabricator willing to work with me to produce a 3-stage lenticular print at this scale. A few months ago, on March 4th, in preparation for installation, I had a brief call with my ASHRAE Emerging Fellow mentor, Ellen Babcock. At one point in the conversation, I told Professor Babcock that I intended to install a QR code next to the portal, such that I could link it to an anonymous survey that would gather responses to the work. Surely, I thought, if I were to publish in ASHRAE's journal, I would likely want to capture some kind of evidence or response to the work. But then Professor Babcock asked a provocative question that, in hindsight, was so very bold and insightful. Ellen paused and then asked, "What if instead of a QR code, you placed a faux elevator button beside the work?" The image to the right is photoshopped, but what struck me most about Professor Babcock's comment was that it was a laser-like epistemological shot at positivism. Through her comment, not my own, I believe the true, deep personal meaning of this work was somewhat revealed. This humanistic concern for human imagination was put into a succinct and provocative suggestion. Then at once she relented, and we discussed 4 simple questions to ask viewers who might scan the QR code. But after our call, I quietly asked myself, does everything, even art or imagination, need to be quantified? Perhaps that was her point. Before we view a short video demonstration of the portal, I would like to share this photo of the Bentley University facilities crew who assisted me in the installation and also thank them. What blew my mind was not only that they helped me affix this strange thing to a brick wall, but they, in my view, saw themselves as co-authors of the work, stressing over details that I myself would not have considered. I am unfathomably grateful for their support. Okay, and here will be a 1-minute video demo of the installed portal. Okay, and lastly, we'll move into a section around results and perspectives. As part of my ASHRI Fellowship and grant, I've been invited to submit a case study that reports on the process and findings of the project. Later this year, I intend to submit a case study to the Interdisciplinary Journal of Signage and Wayfinding. As mentioned earlier, next to this portal is a QR code that linked to a short anonymous survey. Over roughly 2 months, I've received 41 responses. Let's walk through them together. The first of the 4 survey questions asked, in your opinion, does this portal to nature somehow transform this space? To this question, 92.7% or 38 responses said yes. 4.9% or 2 responses said maybe, and 1 said no. In the comments field to question 1, which was optional for respondents, and here I received 24 responses, here are but 3 of those responses. For example, 1, loved the idea and the utility of the concept for high-stress building. Another one read, it's too small to make a noticeable difference. A third read, it takes you out of your routine for a second to appreciate something different, new, and cool. The second of the 4 questions asked, in your opinion, does this portal increase or decrease your level of stress? To this question, 68.3% said it decreases stress. 24.4% said neither, and 7.3%, in this case 3 respondents, said it increases the level of stress. In the optional comments for question 2, I also received 24 responses. Here are 3. Because you get a sense of calm a calm environment around you, it makes it feel like you are actually there. Due to change in perspective, it causes stress and a bit of dizziness. And lastly, it stops you in your tracks, in a sense, forcing you to calm down and breathe. The third of the 4 survey questions asked, in your opinion, does this portal A, provide positive distraction, B, spark curiosity, or C, neither? For this question, 73.2% said it created a positive distraction. 85.4% indicated that it sparked curiosity, and 2.4% said neither. In the optional comments for question 3, I received 16 responses. Here are 3. I was very curious as to how it worked. It sparked curiosity because I wanted to see the exact changes between perspectives and I wanted to understand how that worked. Love more of it, please. And lastly, the fourth survey question asked, how do you interpret this portal or door when you first encountered it? Or what did you think it was? Here are 4 responses. I thought it was a poster, and then I saw it move, and I was confused but very fascinated. It reminded me of Harry Potter. Like a pathway to a different place. And lastly, it is something that makes you want to discover what it is and how it works, bringing a whimsical moment in a person's life. To conclude, about a month ago, I hosted a short on-site talk at Bentley about this work. In my talk, which was more of a conversation or forum than a formal talk, we discussed some of the potential meanings of this work. At one point in the conversation, the group discussed notions of liminality, and specifically how things can change and shift based on your viewpoint, your perspective, the time, or even the context. In some ways, it is the in-betweenness that is the hallmark of design itself. Beyond signifying nature and materials research, I believe that somewhere in that conversation is the bigger answer to the bigger question I am asking. And as a proxy or sign, this work puts forth and explores. Thank you so much, and I look forward to your questions.
Yes, so the floor is open for questions, so please feel free to directly ask Dan your question. And Dan, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you for the shout out towards my appeal to unquantified responses to art. But it's a really interesting, one thing I do want to say is that it's interesting to think about this in the context of the portal from New York to Dublin that you first showed. Like maybe some of this research could have been done in advance to think about how to screen some of these responses. Yeah. Okay, you've got some responses in the chat. Can you see that one?
Oh,
From
yes. Let's see.
Villanova.
Daniel Villanova. Really neat work. Wondering if it matter if it's a door or a window, how that affects stress/transportation. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. You know, some might say that a lot of two-dimensional artwork is a portal, right? So I think the form is inconsequential, but I think what you see in the responses to this piece is that while I sort of joke about the Harry Potter quality of it, it does sort of change a mindset versus like, you know, a lot of, not all, and I don't want to generalize here, but, you know, some artwork is a little more passive. And I think like even in some of the conversations with Ellen, this, and much like some of Ellen's actual work, you know, the piece is a little bit of an intervention in that it encourages people to, it sort of catches them off guard and attempts to stop them and get them to consider what it is, what it's doing, why it's there. And again, through like Ellen's comment about the like, you know, faux elevator, which almost would reinforce that notion. I think that's part of the strength of the piece, given the responses, versus, you know, like if a window, uh, you know, maybe it could have the same effect. But it's a great question.
Hi,
From
Dan.
Eric. Oh, yeah. Oh, and there's a question.
Yes, I have a
Oh, hello,
question.
Nancy. Thank you for
Oh,
joining.
hello. And I want to say everybody's here. We're all
Oh,
listening to
yes.
you.
Hi, folks. Thank you. This is Mike from Merrimack College. Thank you all for joining.
Yeah, there are a couple questions, but my question is about scale. So you chose to use, human scale, regular scale. Did you think of increasing the scale so it's bigger than overwhelming scale, or did you really want it to be at human scale, the scale of a door?
Yeah, yeah. One, it's funny that you should ask that because, I didn't show all of the comments that I received through the survey, but a couple of them got to kind of the heart of your question. Like they felt like it was, it was working, but they just kind of reading between the lines, it seemed like for some respondents, they wished it was more immersive. And I think that immersion could come through scale. So the material is limiting without tiling. I think this is about as big as you can go really with lenticular. And I really did not want to like tile this piece, although in for like advertising and marketing, you do see people use it in tiled form at a bigger scale. But I think, yeah, I think you're right. It would be really kind of cool or fascinating to think about what this could do on a bigger scale and in a kind of more like even more immersive context.
Right. And one other question, then I'll be quiet. And then obviously you chose lenticular printing, which is cool because, it involves the user moving as opposed to static. But if you did go bigger, would you consider big video screen? So then it becomes more immersive with sound and video, just something to think of. But I do like the lenticular aspect too.
Yeah, yeah. I love that question as well. Yeah. I I sort of like at the beginning of this, uh, as I was thinking through that question myself about like, various media, uh, I just found it for me selfishly refreshing to not use anything digital, like anything that used power, anything that used like digital interaction, cameras, multi-sensor, and that is so paradoxical given that my master's degree is from the Dynamic Media Institute, and I would still put this work in the category of dynamic media, even though it's not digital. So it's kind of right in between as a medium, and there aren't so many mediums that do that. Um, but certainly with digital technology and sensors and digital displays, the gloves could really come off in terms of what you could do. So yeah, great question.
So Dan, you have a couple more in the chat.
Excellent. All right, let's start with Steve. Sorry, I missed your introduction, but I want to ask again about, does everything have to be quantified? Well, Ellen, you're the one that sort of started this.
Yeah.
Uh,
Steve, I come from the world of art. I teach in the art department. So and I have done quite a few projects in the realm of public art. So in my project specifically involved putting artwork in abandoned signage here in Albuquerque, where I live. One of the reasons and one of the ways in which we actually attract attention to our signs is by withholding immediate identifiability of, who's speaking here, who's providing this image. And by withholding that, we carve out a space for a certain kind of mystery. So that's the root of why I asked Dan this question about originally in one of our previous conversations about providing the QR code. I was offering an alternate way of thinking about it. So I'll turn it over to you, Dan, to answer more.
I really think that's it, and not to overly simplify it, but um, you, in some ways, you might be careful with a work like this of taking away the magic. like, or the mystery or the intrigue, because as is reflected in some of the comments, that's kind of what it's doing, is encouraging through like just this kind of intervention in a otherwise, pretty plain hallway, a kind of uh, a forced entry into like divergent thought in some ways is kind of the way I think about it. So yeah, Steve, hopefully that kind of gives you a little insight. And from Eric, I'm not sure if I read this one yet. Wonderful project, Dan, raised a lot of interesting questions and ideas. Amazing that your work changed a mindset, sparked curiosity and imagination. What surprised you most about the responses you received? I actually think that's a wonderful question. I think the small amount of feedback, like that was, one of the things I was curious about is for some people, if they'd be kind of sensitive to a work that is dynamic, like if it would kind of throw them off too much, and they'd find it, rather than sparking imagination, they'd find it like, disorienting. So I do think in a research context, it would be more interesting in like a follow-up study to really understand perhaps like how this could negatively affect people as well. I think that would be really important. Certainly, if you were to do something like this in a healthcare context, for instance, I think that would be really important maybe to understand, and how that might be connected to certain outcomes in an environment like that. So I think that would be kind of the thing that surprised me and the thing that I'd be curious to learn more about.
Thanks, Dan. I'm going to hop on now. For those that don't know me, I'm Maggie Mason, and I am the executive director at ASHRI. So I just wanted to take time to thank you for presenting today, and then also let everybody know that we just stopped we were just accepting proposals for this year's class of emerging fellows last week, but please look at the ASHRI website and check out more information, www.ashri.org, to hear more about applying for next year's class and just more ways to get involved with the group. So on behalf of everyone at ASHRI, Dan, I really appreciate you coming on and joining and being a part of the Emerging Fellow Program. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Maggie. And I also, once again, want to thank Ellen. I want to thank all of the attendees for joining today. Appreciate your time and support. And thank you once again to ASHRI for the support of this project.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
Dan.
all.